She was dragged off a plane for asking for water. What the airline didn't know, she controlled the $5 billion they needed to survive. Naomi Carter stood tall in her tailored navy suit, the fabric hugging her frame with effortless grace. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor of JFK's Terminal 7, each step an echo of determination forged over decades. At 38, she was the founder and CEO of Carter Equity Group, a private investment firm that had grown from a single-room startup into a global powerhouse managing over $60 billion in assets. She paused near the panoramic windows, watching planes taxi across the tarmac. Her mind raced, not from anxiety, but preparation. She had built this trip around a pivotal energy merger in London, a deal that could shift her company's international reach overnight. Her keynote at the London Finance Forum would set the tone for future markets. Timing, clarity, and precision were everything. Her assistant, Malik, had booked her a first-class seat on Falcon Air, a carrier she had never flown but had recently entered Carter Equity's radar. Their team had quietly initiated a due diligence process: balance sheets, executive turnover, pending lawsuits. Falcon Air was treading water and needed a $5 billion investment to survive. Naomi hadn't yet revealed her interest. She believed in observing quietly before engaging. With her boarding pass and ID in hand, she joined the short line for first-class check-in. Ahead of her, a white businessman in a golf jacket chatted casually with the agent, laughing as she handed him his documents. Naomi stepped forward with a soft, "Good morning," but the warmth she'd just witnessed evaporated. The agent's smile faded. "Can I see your ID again, please?" she asked. Naomi complied. The agent scrutinized it. Then the boarding pass. Then her again. "And how was this ticket purchased?" the woman asked. "Through my company's corporate account," Naomi replied calmly. Behind her, she felt the weight of eyes. A couple waiting in the business class line whispered. The agent still hadn't returned her documents. After a tense pause, the woman finally cleared her throat. "Thank you. Enjoy your flight." Her voice was cool. No smile. Naomi took her documents and walked toward security. "Let it go," she told herself. "You're here to close a deal, not pick a fight." But it wasn't over. At TSA, her boarding pass triggered a random screening. She raised an eyebrow as a white man with a nearly identical carry-on walked through untouched. Naomi submitted to the process without protest, reminding herself of her mother's old phrase, "Never let them know they got to you." By the time she reached the gate, her patience was threadbare. The boarding gate glowed with "First class now boarding." She stepped forward, but the male agent looked at her ticket, then at her. "First class is now boarding," he said slowly, as if explaining it again. "I know," Naomi said, extending her pass. He scanned it, wordless. On board, Naomi found seat 2A and settled in. The cabin was cool and pristine. Leather seats, ambient light. A few passengers were already sipping champagne. Not her. Brandon, the flight attendant with a smile reserved for others, passed her row twice without acknowledgement. Naomi gave it 10 minutes, then asked, "Excuse me, may I have a glass of water, please?" Brandon didn't stop walking. "We're busy with boarding." After takeoff, the man next to her raised an eyebrow. "That's odd. He brought me champagne 5 minutes ago." Naomi smiled thinly. "Perhaps he forgot me." No apology ever came. Instead, Brandon returned with another crew member and whispered something in his ear while glancing at her. Naomi caught fragments. Tone, complaint, uncomfortable. Then a third figure appeared. The purser. "Miss Carter, I'm afraid we need to ask you to deplane." Naomi blinked. "Why?" "You've made the crew uncomfortable. Security will escort you." She sat motionless. This wasn't confusion. It was erasure. Passengers began murmuring. Someone took out a phone. The man beside her stiffened but said nothing. As the security officers appeared, Naomi slowly rose, lifted her bag, and walked down the aisle with the full dignity of a woman who had negotiated billion-dollar deals, yet was being treated like a threat for simply existing in luxury while black. The security room was stark. No windows, just pale gray walls, flickering fluorescent lights, and a metal table that had seen too many quiet injustices. Naomi Carter sat rigidly in one of the cold plastic chairs, her designer heel snapped at the arch, lying on the floor beside her feet like some discarded symbol of power lost. Her navy suit jacket was wrinkled, her silk scarf twisted, and one of her diamond studs was missing, ripped from her ear when one of the guards had accidentally brushed her shoulder during the removal. Her purse sat in front of her, unzipped from the search they claimed was protocol. Her boarding pass and ID lay out like evidence. She looked at the officer across the table. Officer Malone, mid-40s, crew cut, a name tag she had memorized without effort. "We were just following procedure," he repeated for the second time. "There was a disruption reported by a flight attendant. Our job is to keep the cabin safe." Naomi tilted her head slightly. "And what was the nature of this disruption?" He hesitated. "The crew felt you were confrontational. For asking for water," she said flatly. A second officer, Davis, leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Ma'am, these decisions aren't personal. They're operational." Naomi chuckled dryly. "You're right. They're not personal. They're systemic." The room went quiet again. The silence was thick, like the weight of decades of excuses, all piled into one nondescript airport holding cell. Her phone buzzed on the table. Officer Davis looked at it, then at her. "It was unlocked when you handed it over. And I want it back." He hesitated. "I'll have to check with." She didn't wait. She reached for the device, unlocked it, and held it to her ear. "Naomi," came James' voice, sharp, urgent, grounded. "You need to hear this. Falcon Air submitted a funding proposal last Friday. They're bleeding cash. They're requesting $5 billion. And guess who's listed as their #1 target investor?" Naomi's eyes narrowed, though her expression remained unreadable. "Let me guess, us." "Exactly. Carter Equity is on the top of the list. They've been circling us for months. Emails, calls, presentation decks. You were scheduled to meet with their board next month." Naomi's gaze shifted slowly toward the officers. Davis had stopped pretending not to listen. Malone was scrolling through a printed intake form. The balance in the room shifted slightly, like a temperature drop before a storm. "They don't know," James added. "They have no idea who they just dragged off that flight." Naomi closed her eyes and inhaled through her nose. Not to calm herself, but to recenter her strategy. "Call Lena and Paul," she said. "Legal and PR, tell them to go on standby. I'm going to need both." "Already on it," James said. "And Naomi?" "I'm fine," she replied. "Just bruised pride. Nothing I haven't survived before." When the call ended, she rose slowly, straightened her jacket, and walked to the security room's small mirror. Her hair, once perfectly swept into a tight bun, had started to frizz at the edges. She smoothed it back, removed her broken heel, and stood barefoot for a moment in complete silence. She thought of the women who came before her, her grandmother who cleaned hospital floors, her mother who worked 2 jobs to pay for her math tutoring. Women who had no boardrooms to fight in, who swallowed these insults whole. But Naomi wasn't them. She had a platform, leverage, a name that could move markets and crash careers. She slipped her heel into her bag, pulled out a fresh pair of flats, and looked at the mirror one last time. She wasn't a victim. She was the storm they didn't see coming. By the time Naomi stepped into the back seat of her waiting black SUV, Falcon Air was already in crisis mode. Her team had acted fast. Within 30 minutes of her removal from the flight, the video had surfaced online. By the end of the hour, it had been reposted over 200,000 times. The footage showed her calm, composed, and respectful. The flight attendant's smirk, the tight grip of the security officer on her forearm, the silence of the passengers, and one line, caught on a passenger's phone, was already becoming a meme. "You should sit down, miss, before things escalate." Now the world had seen exactly what escalation looked like. Naomi's phone buzzed as she pulled a bottle of water from the SUV's cooler. It was her assistant, Lena. "They're panicking," Lena said. "PR teams are calling around, trying to bury it. They still don't realize who you are." Naomi gave a dry laugh. "Not yet." 2 minutes later, her phone rang again. Unknown number. New York area code. She answered on speaker. "Ms. Carter," a voice said, tight with formality. "This is Darren Whitmore, CEO of Falcon Air. I want to personally apologize." She cut him off before the word apologize could finish leaving his mouth. "This call isn't necessary," she said coolly. "Please," he began. "This isn't about me being offended, Mr. Whitmore. I'm not a customer asking for a refund. I'm not calling for compensation. I'm calling for culture." A pause. I understand," he said. He didn't. What happened on that plane was unacceptable, and we are conducting an internal review